Hello everyone, welcome to BioShots, a new learning destination providing video lectures loaded with high quality content aligned with the current syllabus of NET, civil services and university programs. Watch now and subscribe the channel for your academic growth. I'm Neelam Mishra presenting a video on biofuels, a promising alternative to next generation fuels. When we think about the fossil fuels, the obvious question that comes in our mind is how long will the global fossil fuel reserves last? Maybe 60 years, 70 years, or at the most 100 years. Fossil fuels are limited, depleting rapidly, and may not last long at current consumption rates. Besides that, the continued use of fossil fuels is destabilizing the planet's natural ecosystems, leading to global climate change. Thus, it is imperative to take a more proactive stance on biofuels. Well, you may ask, why biofuels? Transport sector accounts for about 25% of the total energy consumption and is largely dependent on crude oil imports. If biofuel production and use reduce our consumption of imported fossil fuels, we may become less vulnerable to the adverse impacts of supply disruptions. A new perspective and growing consensus at policy level about the need and liability of tapping into domestic biomass resources for energy supply has created impetus for promotion of biofuels in India. The next important question is, can biofuels play a balancing role between economic growth and environment? Let's find out the answer and begin with a very basic question. What do we mean by the term fuel? I guess many of you know the precise answer. Fuels are those materials from which useful energy can be extracted. In using any material as fuel, this release of energy usually involves burning or combustion, which needs air, to be accurate, oxygen. During combustion, the fuel undergoes a major change of chemical composition and heat is produced, that is, energy is released out. For example, methane, which is the principal component of natural gas, a type of fossil fuel, is completely burnt in the presence of oxygen. Carbon dioxide and water are formed along with the release of energy in this reaction. The heat energy released in this process is the difference between the chemical energy of methane plus oxygen and the chemical energy of the resulting carbon dioxide plus water. In practice, it is referred to as calorific value or energy content or heat value measured in joules, kilojoules, gigajoules per unit mass or volume depending upon the physical state of the fuel. So moving forward with the topic of this video, biofuels. What are biofuels and how they are classified into categories and generations? Biofuels are defined as combustible fuels produced from renewable primary and secondary biomass resources. Broadly speaking, there are two categories of biofuels, primary and secondary, depending on whether biomass materials undergo processing or remain unprocessed to be used as biofuel. Primary biofuels such as fuel wood, wood chips and pellets are organic materials used in an unprocessed form primarily for heating, cooking or electricity generation. While secondary biofuels result from processing of biomass and include liquid and gaseous biofuels that can be used in place or in addition to petrol, diesel or other fossil fuels for transportation, stationary power, portable power and other industrial processes. The major types of liquid fuels are summarized in this slide. Although the most widely used liquid biofuels for transport are bioethanol and biodiesel, but biobutanol is more close to petrol than ethanol and can be transported via existing pipelines. Ethanol and butanol can be used in petrol engines either as blending fuel or in flexible fuel vehicles. Similarly, biodiesel can be used as both blended with fossil diesel and in pure form in adapted diesel engines. The gaseous biofuels shown here include biogas, biomethane, and biohydrogen. Biogas chiefly contains methane and is used for cooking, heating, and lighting purposes, mainly in rural areas. Biomethane can be combusted directly or converted to ethanol. Biohydrogen can be used in fuel cells for generating electricity. The chemistry of these biofuels and the different biomass conversion technologies involved in their production will be presented in the upcoming videos. Biofuels provide a strategic advantage to promote sustainable development and to supplement conventional fossil fuels. Assuming high demand and extensive use of biofuels in future will require much more supply of feedstock on a sustainable basis. In order to fulfill that requirement, there is considerable enthusiasm among all these stakeholders and specific measures are being taken to include many potential biomass sources other than the edible crops to increase the production of biofuels at large scale while avoiding a conflict of fuel versus food security. In this context, biofuels are classified into 4 generations depending on the characteristic of biomass feedstock and the technology involved in biomass processing. The first generation biofuels are conventional biofuels derived directly from edible or food crops, which include sugar-rich energy crops like sugarcane, sugar beet, sweet sorghum, molasses, starch-containing corn, cassava, potatoes, and edible oil seeds like sunflower, soybean, palm oil, and hay crops used as animal feed. Simple biomass conversion processes such as fermentation, hydrolysis, distillation, transesterification are employed to produce first-generation biofuels. However, first-generation biofuels pose a threat to food prices since the biomass used are food crops and animal feed crops. They also have a negative impact on biodiversity due to competition for land, water, and soil nutrients. Next is second generation biofuels, which are made from non-food crops, non-edible oil crops such as jatropha, linseed, grasses, plant and animal waste materials, agriculture and forestry residues such as rice husk, cereal straw, cotton stalk, bagasse, used cooking oil, etc. All these feedstock are rich in cellulose or lignocellulose. Complex biochemical and thermochemical conversion technologies are used to produce 2G biofuels. Second generation biofuels are considered more advanced and address many issues associated with first generation biofuels. There is no competition between food and fuel crops. Most importantly, they allow the use of wasteland and degraded land where food crops may not be able to grow. Nevertheless, there are some limitations related to the cost effectiveness involved in scaling the production to a commercial level. Third generation biofuels are derived from microorganisms, particularly macro and microalgae. Third generation biofuels entered mainstream recently and are more energy dense than energy plants. Algae such as chlorella are cultivated as low-cost, high-yield feedstock. The limitation is that algal fuel technology is still in early development stage and facing technological problems. For instance, lot of dewatering is required and algal oils are hard to extract. Further research is needed to improve the extraction process and make it financially competitive and viable. Keeping in mind the fast-changing biofuel sector, a new fourth-generation biofuel has been added to the list. Fourth-generation biofuels focuses on modifying these microorganisms and energy plants genetically to achieve a preferable hydrogen to carbon yield, along with creating an artificial carbon sink to eliminate or minimize carbon emissions. This does not require the destruction of biomass but need efficient methods for transformation and gene expression in dedicated crop species and microorganisms. Genetic engineering techniques and biotechnology will play a significant role in developing new species with higher biomass yields. 4G biofuels include microbial fuel cell, bioelectrofuel cells, and photobiological solar cells. In essence, biofuels has a potential to stimulate rural development and generate a new demand for agricultural products that goes beyond traditional food, feed, and fiber uses. Many countries see biofuels as an opportunity to develop a new export market of their agricultural problems and to increase export revenues like United States and Brazil, the leading countries in the world in biofuel production. Developing countries located in tropical and subtropical regions like India have advantages in biofuel production. India has been pursuing a robust strategy for promotion of biofuels and set a target of 20% blending of biofuels in transportation fuels like petrol, diesel and jet fuel by 2030, recently preponed by Government of India to 2025. It's important to note here that India launched the National Biofuel Policy way back in 2008, but it has been continuously unsuccessful. Recently, India drafted a new National Biofuel Policy adopted in 2018. In the next video, we will discuss in detail about this new and revised biofuel policy and its modalities. Till then, stay connected and give your valuable feedback. Thank you. Thank you for watching and paying attention.